I just started. Well, so this is I think day fourth when we are meeting, and today we'll be exploring patterns and print repeats. So the objective is to understand how a seamless pattern can be created in Photoshop and then applied on various surfaces. So we'll be covering, I would say, that basic to intermediate level concepts when it comes to applying the pattern. But uh, the first part of this will start by identifying the seamless patterns and how we can extract it from a repeat. That is also our agenda. For example, let's say this one. Okay, so this is a seamless pattern. How can we identify that? Uh, that is first thing. So I'm just going to copy, and let's go to the Photoshop, start with a new file, and we are going to go with an A4 size C, and I'm going to simply paste it here. Now the way patterns work in Photoshop or any other Adobe program, most of the other programs also, is this is repeated horizontally in this way, and if you can't identify any seam in between, that means it's a seamless repeat. The checkered background might create a little problem. They just did it to make it difficult to copy this thing, but no problem, we can create our own. So this is just for reference. So this is how horizontally the tiles are repeated, and we can also check if vertically this is seamless or not. So if it is difficult to identify a seam where the pattern is actually identify one single tile, then we call it a seamless pattern. And this particular one is four-way repeat. So we also have two-way repeats where it is just horizontally seamless, and then we have four-way repeat, which is horizontally and vertically both way it's seamless. So let's get rid of this, and let's go to Google again to find out something more difficult. So for example, this one, this looks very complicated, right? So let's right click on this, choose copy, and we will go to Photoshop, paste it, and let's quickly try identifying whether it is seamless or not. So if I make a copy of it, yes, it is definitely a seamless repeat. We can't identify the seam, right? And then I'll make a vertical copy, and yes, this is also a four-way repeat. Now if we have managed to find out a single tile of a pattern, right, which is a seamless repeat, two-way or four-way, doesn't matter, we can convert this into a pattern. And the way we can do it is very simple. We just have to ensure that the layer on which the content is selected, okay, and ensure that it's just the single tile and rest of the area should be transparent completely, then only it is going to work. So layer 1 is selected, which has the pattern tile on it. I go to edit menu and choose define pattern, this option. Now after clicking on this dialog box will appear, and all we have to do is say OK. But before we say OK, we have to look at the thumbnail, and what I see here is that it is also taking the wide area in account, right? This tile is surrounded by the white area, right? And this is a big mistake people do, and for the same reason I also on purpose did it, so that you don't make it. uh, we have to hold control and click on this layer thumbnail and make an active selection around the area which we need to convert into a pattern. That is the prerequisite. Now we go to the edit menu and go to define pattern, but in this case the define pattern option is not visible, right? I cannot define this as a pattern, so now this is a problem, right? So let's again try it. Edit and define pattern is not available to me. So in this case what we should do, we should just get rid of the background first, and another thing which we will do is go to the image menu, go to the trim option, and then from the trim dialog box make sure that the transparent pixels is selected, and trim away top, bottom, left, right. So it's gonna trim away all the transparent pixel which is surrounding this pattern tile. Let's say OK, and now if I go to the edit menu, define pattern option is available to me. So let's click on this, and this time look at this thumbnail here, it only shows the pattern tile and nothing else around it, right? So this is the correct way to define the pattern. I'm gonna say OK. Now seems as if nothing happened, but actually we have successfully defined this pattern, and we can basically close this file and start with the new one because it got saved in the Photoshop's pattern library. Let it be here, and I'm gonna open up a new file by saying Ctrl N on the keyboard, go to A4, and now let's say I want to fill this entire page with that pattern. Okay, so understand how I am applying the pattern. I'll have to create a new layer first, and on this layer we need to have some content, right? Then only we can apply the pattern. We can fill it with pattern also. So case 1, understand, this is case 1. In this case what I'm going to do is simply press shift plus F5 on the keyboard to bring up so shift plus F5 is going to bring the fill dialog box. You can get the same dialog box by going to the edit menu and choosing this command fill from here, and here in the content option you have pattern also available to you. So let's pick pattern, and then in the options from custom pattern click on this drop down and you will find the newly created pattern there, and now you can fill this by saying OK. See, the pattern got filled. We can't identify the seam anywhere, right? We just created this pattern, right? But there is a catch here. Now let's say if I want to scale this pattern, I don't have much options here other than saying Ctrl T and then increasing the size of it by holding Alt on the keyboard and Shift on the keyboard simultaneously, right? So this is how I can scale up, right? But if I scale down the pattern, then there is a problem, right? The white area is showing up from behind. So I'm just going to hit escape on the keyboard. I don't want this transformation to happen. And let's look at the case 2. Now in this case I'm not going to apply the pattern directly on the layer or fill the layer with the pattern, but rather I'm just going to let me just get rid of this layer very quick, or yeah, let me just get rid of this very quick, and I'm going to start with a new layer, and here I'll change my method. Rather than applying the filling it with the pattern, I would go to effects menu here and then go for pattern overlay. But there is a catch. If there is nothing on this layer, the pattern overlay is not going to work because it says overlay. I am overlaying the pattern on top of something which is there on layer 1, right? So what I'll do, first fill this layer with something, and that can be anything. I can fill it with a let's say the foreground color, which is this red color. It just has to have some content on it. right? That is very important. So now I can go to the FX menu and choose pattern overlay, and then I can look for the pattern I want, right? So this is the pattern which I wanted, and here I have a choice of setting the scale. Now if you are wondering why the color is coming red, now this is because of the blend mode, right? Another concept in Photoshop. What blend modes allow us to do is blend the layer or a particular effect with the layer on which it is applied, or with the layers which are underneath that particular layer. So in this case, the blend mode is affecting the pattern, right, which is overlaid on top of layer 1. So here we can look in the layers panel that layer 1 has an effect applied to it which says pattern overlay, and the multiply blend mode essentially treats white as transparent. And if we look at the pattern, let me switch it to the normal mode, then the pattern is going to be visible. So wherever there is white, right, that's going to be treated as transparent, and that's the reason why we can see through it and we can see the color of the layer, right? So let me switch to multiply, and if you are wondering what happened to the green color, so the green color also had some white in it, right? Some amount of white in it. It's not absolute hue, right? So it has some lightness in it, and that is white, which is also getting completely removed by the multiply blend mode. And that's why when I switch to multiply, it turns into this. So it can be leveraged out for creating variations of the pattern in terms of colors and in terms of scale also. Okay, and we don't have to worry about it getting smaller, or like revealing the background, because it is getting applied on the entire layer. Now another important thing here which we can look at, let me just say OK to it. Now this layer is completely filled with this red color. What if I don't want the layer completely filled with red, but rather, let's say, let me just delete the content from here, which can be done by simply hitting delete on the keyboard. Now it gets rid of the entire layer. I just want to delete the content on this layer, not the entire layer. So I'll have to make the selection by holding Control and clicking on it, and then I'm gonna hit delete on the keyboard. So which again sets this layer to transparent, and we will not be able to see the pattern overlay effect applied on it. So in this case, let's say if I want just a circle of red color, then I can make a selection, make sure layer 1 is selected, and hit Alt backspace on the keyboard to fill the foreground color. And we see it that wherever we have content on this layer, the pattern is being overlaid. It will hold true even if I make couple of in other places I make these circles. Oh, sorry. And if I fill this also with red color or any other color also, let's say that I want to fill these two selections with a different color, I'm gonna go for slightly purplish, and then say Alt backspace. So we can see that the same pattern is affecting different colors differently. So this can also be used for creating different effects or wherever it is needed. There are many use cases to this configuration. So this is part 1 of how we work with patterns. What we learned here is to identify a 4-way repeat and then convert that into a pattern, and then we have applied that pattern in 2 different methods. One is directly filling the pattern, filling the layer with the pattern. Another is using pattern overlay from the effects menu and applying it on a layer. Okay, all right. So I'm just going to close this one. This is done, and now let me just close this one also and start with a new A4 size sheet. Now the question is, what if I get a repeat which is not very clear to me? So in this case, most of the repeats are very clear. What about this one? Okay, so this one seems a little tricky. Let me just copy this and paste it here. So it's very tiny. I just hope that the quality is decent. Okay, we can work with it. Not very good in quality, but it's fine. Now, if I repeat this thing, let me resize it a little so that I didn't repeat it. Now, see, there is a disconnect, right? It feels as if it is a seamless pattern, but we probably do not have the correct tiling, right? So this is not the correct tile. Okay, now vertically also, let's quickly give it a try. And vertically also, we see that there are some discrepancies along the seam line, right? So how do we extract that one single tile from it? Okay, so that's the next challenge. So a very simple method is there, and this is something which I have derived over the years of working in Photoshop, and it works every time. So I'm gonna create two layers, two copies of this layer 1. Okay, so I'll say Control J couple of times, and then I'm going to select both of them and then reduce their opacity by 20%. Let's go for 30%. It doesn't matter, it just should be see-through, that's it. Now all three of them are superimposed on top of each other. So first I am going to select the top layer and then start pushing it till the time I see it completely getting merged. You know, this film like effect which you see should completely be merged. What I'm doing here is trying to move this top layer, right, and trying to find out a place where it completely becomes invisible, because it is exactly aligning with the pattern below it. So as I drag it towards right, now here I see that it is completely getting merged with the background, right? See, this is the point. Okay, so I'll just drop it there. Okay, now I'm going to select the layer below it and then start moving it. Now for this to happen, you have to ensure that auto select is off, right, and the correct layer is selected. Now I'm gonna click and then drag it. I'm holding shift so that I constrain the vertical alignment, and as I drag it down, I'm trying to locate a place where it completely gets merged. This is the place, right? Okay, perfect. Now all I have to do here is select both of them and bump up the opacity all the way to 100. No, see, we have created a seamless repeat. I can see that I had repeated it and it is looking seamless, but how to extract that tile? Now pay very close attention to it as I reduce the opacity. Understand what I'm gonna do. First thing first, I just want to capture, let me show you by pulling up the guidelines, and the guidelines should automatically snap, and it's not snapping. Wait, do we have the smart guides on?
That's how I felt last night. It's not working.
No, it should work actually. Sometimes the guides don't find out the edges. Now see, it's locking now. Okay, this is working. And hold for a while. Yeah, this is locking also. So it should automatically lock. This is just for showing you. Otherwise what you can do is, now control click on this which makes this selection. Then control shift click on this. Now if you will see, you know, this got selected here. This area, is it visible? See, okay. So the idea here is to not select the extra part, but just this much we need, one single tile. And to do that, we will do exactly the reverse of it. So control D, we will control click on this to make the selection of the original picture we had copied from Google. And then instead of saying shift, we will say control alt click on this, and then once again control alt click on the top one, and then we have the perfect selection. Okay, and this is our one single tile. And then let's go to the layer 1. We can switch off this one, and make a copy of the selection we have by saying control J on the keyboard, and then hide this one also, and then hide the guidelines also. We don't need it anyway, right? Yeah, so control semicolon to hide the guidelines. Now this tile, let's quickly check it whether it is a seamless repeat or not. So I'm gonna make a copy and then stick it here, and use my arrow keys to push it. See, it completely merges. And then I'm gonna select these two layers and drag it down and push it up slightly, and then it should also completely merge. Okay, there are a little bit of misalignment is there, but I think it is because of the quality of the image. We can't do much about it. So if it is a good quality and at a different zoom level, it wouldn't be even recognizable. So now this is what we have. In fact, we can merge all of it by selecting all three to make a bigger tile by saying control E on the keyboard, which merges down all the selected layers. And now we have a bigger tile which we can again repeat, and it will again be seamless in nature. Okay, little bit so this little thing here is because we are at a zoom level which is not working out well for us. Here it looks perfectly seamless. This is because of the quality of the image. So let me just get rid of all of it quickly, and the layers we had, extra layers, let me delete that also, and we will do the same thing, right? Delete the background and then go to image, trim, transparent pixels, trim away top, bottom, left, right, say OK, and then see there is something problematic here, because I tried to trim away the transparent pixel, but Photoshop is telling me that there is something in these regions also, right? So in this case, what I'll do, I'm gonna use the crop tool and then pull this slightly outside, pull this slightly outside, say enter, and once again try the same thing by going to image, trim, and let's see if this works. No, I think there are some pixels which are left here, so let's do it manually in this case. Okay, all right. Alright, so we have a one single now see couple of pixels are here, 4-5 rows are there, right? Need to take care of that also. So again switch to crop to make sure that we get pixel perfect. Yes. Now let's quickly go to edit, choose define pattern, and then say okay. Now start with a new file, A4 size sheet, and let's create a new layer. And in this case we will create some shape, random shape, something, I don't know. And let's just try filling that pattern into it. First I'm going to say alt backspace to fill it with some content, say Control D, go to the effects menu, make sure that layer 1 is selected, choose pattern overlay, and then change the pattern to the newly created pattern which we did. And then we have these options of playing around with the blend mode also, which we can definitely test out by selecting that field and using my arrow keys on the keyboard. And sometimes just toggling with these blend mods also gives you very interesting results. Okay, I like this one. So this one is also okay. So we can learn more about the blend mods in the Adobe manual. You can read about it. I can show you the reference if you want to read. Just a second. So I'm sharing with you in the chat box a link. Just save it and later on you can read it. It talks about all the blend mods. Okay, I'll just show you the other ones. So these are the blend mods, and if you read them you will understand what they do. Covering all of it like here in this session wouldn't make much of a sense, but most of the time what works for me is that rather than like there are few blend mods which I'm aware that precisely this is what it is going to do, but remembering all of it is not needed. Just the hit and trial mostly works, and sometimes it surprises you as well. So I better rely upon just pressing some extra keystrokes and then seeing it for myself. I check it once at least, the blend mods, after overlaying the patterns, or even if I'm just simply blending two layers, I try to see which one works best for me. And since we have created this seamless pattern, we have full control with the scale. Okay, alright, so I'm gonna say okay. Now we have learned two things. First, how to identify the pattern. Second, how to extract the pattern, right? A seamless pattern. Now is the time when we start creating our own pattern, right? So rather than just extracting it from an existing pattern, we will try to create our own, and in the process we will learn what are the important things to keep in mind. I'm gonna start with a new file. Now to create the four-way repeat seamless pattern, see, the correct setup would be to start with a square area inside which we are going to build our tile. Tile can consist of multiple objects, right? So we can download it from internet, or we can just simply create it, or if we have those icon symbols So we can utilize those also. So here in this case, I'm gonna go to the custom shape tool, and let me just quickly find out a few shapes. Now for example, Photoshop gives us these four categories by default: wild animals, leaves and trees, boats for some reason, I don't know why, and then we have flowers also. So let me just pick out boats, and I'll just quickly create a few. I'm holding shift to constrain the proportion, otherwise it may get distorted. When you create the shape, by default it's gonna pick up the color of the foreground color. Okay, and I'm just going to pick out a few shapes first, and then we will see how we can build this whole thing, right? Okay, now let me pick out this one. I'm holding shift every time I'm dragging it, or maybe we can just not have any fill at all. That probably would work better in our favor. So let me just get rid of the fill, switch to no fill, and we can increase the stroke. Okay, horrible. So let's go for 2 pixels. Let's see. Okay, right. Yeah, this looks like. So for this one, no fill and 2 pixels. Yes. This looks nice. Okay.
Make sure you get all of them. You know, like the game Battleship?
Yeah.
You know the game Battleship?
Yes, yes. I played it.
Yeah.
Take a simple one also. So now I have these motifs which I can use to create my patterns. Now, see, uh, if once we understand how it works, getting the concept is important. Uh, so we will not try to beautify it at this point of time. I'll just try to build something very very basic, but focus more upon the concept. Now whatever I place here at the corner, right, let me try placing the somebody. Now if I place it here on the corner, now here let's pay attention to what is happening and how this can be seamless, because corners are most tricky. So before we understand the corners, let me pull this down. So if the tile is here and I'm repeating it sideways, so this missing part of it should be completed like so, right? So the front part of it should be completed here, otherwise it is not going to be seamless. So sideways we understand, right? But if I place something here, how do we repeat it across all corners? So it's again is very simple. We have to make one copy here first and make sure that it's now the second window and you can count the pixels. And there are other ways also how we can do it, but right now I'm just focusing on the core concept of how we can make a seamless repeat. We can do it in the easy way also. There are many easy ways actually. If I work in Illustrator, there are better ways to define it, but essentially the concept will be clear here. uh, okay, I'm trying to align it with this pixel here, and see, I need to go one more pixel up, so down actually. This is completely aligned. So we have covered the corners, the sides are fine, and now I can start placing the content wherever I need, and I can rotate it, do n number of things with it, no problem at all. I can resize, fill this middle part in whichever way I want. There is absolutely no problem. I can make copies, you can flip them also by going to edit, transform, and flip horizontal, transform. Oh, Photoshop is too bad in handling vector data. Okay. Now on purpose let it go out and then make a copy here. Now if you want to check the alignment, you can do so by dragging a guideline, aligning it with this point, and checking whether it is meeting the correct location or not. It is in this case. So and okay. Why did I go with vector shapes? It's so difficult to select. Yeah. Okay. Now I can make a selection with the help of guidelines, like so, right? And then use it as a single tile. But before I use this selection, I'll have to merge all these layers into one single layer, and that I can do very easily by saying Control E on the keyboard after selecting all of it. Okay, all of them got merged, and now the selection is active, right? Let's quickly go to the edit menu and then see if define pattern option is available. Yes, it is available, and it is also showing the correct tile which we have created. And I'm gonna say OK and say Control D, and let's quickly test it out. I'm gonna switch off this layer, switch off the guidelines by saying Control semicolon on the keyboard, create a new layer, and then fill this layer with some color. So in this case, let me go with this blue color, Alt backspace, and we will go for a pattern overlay and test our newly created pattern. At this scale, doesn't matter whether it is seamless or not. let me reduce the size of it, and it's really difficult to find out the seam, right? So we have successfully created a seamless pattern. Okay, we can spend more time and spreading the motifs more organically, you know inside the space. uh, you also have option of changing the angle of it, by the way. All right, and then of course you can play around with the blend mode to get something more interesting. This looks good. So I'll go with the normal and say okay. So the patterns are saved in the pattern library, which can be accessed from different ways. Uh, you can also double click on it and choose pattern overlay, by the way, rather than going to FX menu and choosing it from here. So another way of applying it is, let me hide this one for, and I can also apply it on a brush stroke. That's a really good thing. Let me show you. So I can go for the brushes. In next class we will read about the brushes. uh, so far we have just used the round brush, right? But there are so many amazing brushes. Let me show you some splatter brush. Yeah, so this is a splatter brush. We can explore custom brushes in the next class. Okay, now here if I just do a click, I get this splatter, and I can use pattern overlay on this as well. By double clicking, I click on pattern overlay, and instantly you will see that pattern is applied on it. Now in this case it is not looking so nice, uh, so let me switch to something like this. See, so it can be used to create really nice effects. Okay, see,
Okay.
right? And the best part is that the pattern overlay affects the entire layer. So if I click once again, the pattern will be repeated. Like it will keep on getting applied to wherever I click. And I can change the pattern brush also, and you get a different style, maybe, I don't know, right? So many applications I can think of this. All right, so things which we have learned today: uh, identifying a pattern, extracting the pattern, creating the pattern, a four-way seamless repeat, and applying the pattern in multiple ways, right?
Yep.
Any questions you have?
No, I'm going to watch it later and hopefully glean a lot more.
No problem. Now, can you think of the uses of what we have done, the patterns?
Well, with patterns, you could just create basic patterns, but then you can also apply it to wallpapers or change interiors or change patterns on products or use it in the packaging design. Lots of different things.
Correct. So many applications, right? Yeah. So a lot of times students working on a project create a lot of symbols, icons, so they can use those also to create patterns and then use that as a backdrop, uh, of a variety of things. So yes, so that's pretty much, I think, what I had to offer for the day. Uh,
That's perfect. Thank you.
yeah, I want, I could go more, but I can see that no.
No, no, it's I need to go back to the beginning. It's just with my course load and my workload, it's just so insane at this university.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just like I haven't it's break and I haven't stopped working.
Got
So I just took Sunday off. That's it.
And
So
Lisa, for the next class, if you come across anything which is interesting and you want me to cover that, just send me a WhatsApp or mail me the image like we did last time, the packaging
okay.
thing. So if you come across any photo
Yeah,
manipulation, because that is what we are going to do next.
okay. Um Actually one of the projects that I'm going to be doing for packaging and they canceled my UX design class. So I think just focusing on Illustrator and Photoshop right now
Okay,
and getting good at that would be great. But I would like to further dive. I want to dive into the XD class eventually.
sure,
You might
no
just
problem.
you just
We
might
have
be
it planned.
stuck with me for a while as I figure all this out. But I decided for my packaging class, I'm going to do have them start with a paper or a leaf or some kind of, you know, manipulative uh, packaging project that has to do with some sort of paper or foil or composite that's more paper-like or
Okay,
plastic, foldable plastic. Um, and then for the second packaging project, I'm going to have them uh, choose some sort of box or make some sort of box. But the box could be very complex or it could be simple, depending on what they're interested in.
okay,
And then the third project I'm going to do in packaging is based on liquid, and I wrote the dean if I can do wine or beer, because there's such fun like labels for wine and beer. And wine is even more interesting because like the champagne